Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're doing something that everyone is looking forward to, something everyone has been waiting for, more or less. We're going to take a first quick look at which classes will be good in patch 12.1. I've read through the tunings, I've watched videos from good players. Now, for example, has commented on the tanks. A few healers who aren't that well known have made healer lists and so on and so forth. And yeah, we'll just go through that here. We'll categorize everything. We have a lot of specs ahead of us, so it doesn't get too long. For one thing, I've made my notes here from the videos, so don't be surprised if I keep looking over at my second monitor. And at the same time, yeah, we'll use all of this here a bit to give you an overview. We won't go into every single spec in complete detail now, but I'll say a few sentences about each one. It took quite some time to gather all the information, and keep in mind a lot of things can still change. It's just meant to be a fun overview of what's currently good on the PTR. If you want to support this work, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, and with that, let's get started. We'll begin with the D tier. We'll work our way forward slowly. Here we actually have the Devourer Demon Hunter. Blizzard really nerfed it hard, nerfed it. Of course, you could argue whether I'd put it in D or C tier, right? I'm trying to rank them a bit among each other. But Devourer really got hit really hard. That's why we're putting it in here as well. So all in all, your Void Meta works less well. The damage has been redistributed, so Collapsing Star is no longer the main damage dealer or not as strong anymore. And all in all, the spec has lost a lot compared to now. That's why I'm putting it in the D tier, because in my eyes it's the biggest loser and most likely wouldn't be played again. That's why I would. Also currently in the D tier is the Fire Mage, because ultimately, how should I put it? The players are mainly not satisfied with the gameplay. So this isn't purely a damage decision, but here many people say, for example, with Pyroclasm and so on and so forth, people are just absolutely not satisfied with how this spec plays. And in terms of performance, it wasn't the strongest spec before either. That's why it's in the D tier. And also still in the D tier, unfortunately, we have the Outlaw Rogue, because right now it has a lot of RNG involved. So theoretically, he can do okay damage, but it's very dependent on luck. In addition, compared to other classes, you have to press a lot more buttons. So a lot of RPM, APM actions per minute. On top of that, it's absolutely not popular. And from what I've read so far in the WoW forums, the gameplay is supposed to change. That doesn't feel rewarding at all. That's what I took away, what feels rewarding now and what doesn't. That's probably a bit different for everyone. But yeah. Those are the main points. We'll go through the C tier fairly quickly. These are all specs, I have to say, that aren't really bad. Yeah. But because of the changes, they're in a solid spot. I would guess if all of this goes live like that, these are probably classes that could make it in the B tier or somewhere else for other people. Not bad, but also not really standing out. These include the Blood Death Knight. This includes the Frost Death Knight, which still seems to be struggling in Mythic Plus. Also, Havoc Demon Hunter. So here I have to say, yeah. The spec, or rather Demon Hunter in general, is having a few issues right now. Except for the tank, but we'll get to that in a moment. After that, we have the Guardian Druid, so it doesn't seem to be as OP as it is right now. In Now's video, the Demon Hunter was mentioned as being very strong, but we'll get to that in a moment as well. Then we have Frost Mage, the Holy Paladin. From what I've read, many players, especially in raids, say he's currently not good, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change much. We also still have Holy Priest, who is still worse than Disc. We have the subtlety rogue included here. We have the enhancement shaman included here. We have the resto shaman included here. Although personally I would categorize it differently. On one hand, people have written he's not that strong. In another video, he was listed as A tier as the second best option. That's kind of an in-between case. That's why I would probably, if there was such an intermediate category, I would place it here. But for now, we'll put it in B. Other than that, Affliction Warlock in C tier here as well. In theory, could we remove the D tier motorcycle noise? Because the classes here are all pretty close together, and from what I see, we don't have any sims or anything like that yet. This is really just based on what I've read and seen about each class. And for some, theoretically it could also be laid here. We're just putting it in here now simply to have a bigger gradation. Demo Warlock seems to be getting hit a bit too. Although, if in doubt, you could still include it here. And besides that, Prot Warrior is also included, so it seems to be the worst choice among the tanks right now. But again, as I said, C tier in this case doesn't mean they're really brutally bad. It just means they're probably not going to be truly OP meta specs. After that, we continue with the B tier, and 2 druid specs are included here, Boomkin and Feral. With Boomkin, of course, I'm a bit more familiar. Blizzard mainly changed how it works here. You're not supposed to spend astral power so quickly anymore. So your bar won't fill up as quickly anymore. In exchange, many spells have been nerfed, buffed, and so on and so forth. However, for Boomkin, the damage of individual spells is still buffed, but the astral power generation is a bit weaker, and maybe even too weak compared to now. With Feral, it's still a problem to express. Sight or outside of bigger cooldowns, they struggle a bit with the damage. But theoretically good and solid output. In this tier, we also have the Devastation Evoker. We have the Preservation Evoker with us. And we have the Windwalker Monk in this tier. If I could just find the icon now, there it is. So here as well, all specs that are currently performing a bit better than those in the C tier or feel more well-rounded. But that still don't push brutally into this meta direction. In the A tier, we once again have the Brewmaster Monk, who ultimately remains strong. Currently, there are no significant major nerfs for it on the PTR, that's why it will probably continue to be good. We have the Augmentation Evoker. That's why I'm not putting him in the S tier. There aren't any big buffs here, but also not really any nerfs, and the spec is sometimes S tier now, especially in Mythic Plus. I'm putting it in the A tier because this spec really needs to be played well for it to work. And not everyone can manage that. So if played correctly, I think it could even go into the S tier. Anyone who just says in a random dungeon, I'll just try it out now, probably won't get those gains. Arcane Mage is also moving up because it got some buffs. A new talent, Prismatic Bolt. Arcane Missiles have been reworked, which from what I've read makes the gameplay more enjoyable. And even now, we've already seen that in the raid, the spec wasn't too bad. Many people expect it to work even better. Next up is Fury Warrior. Whirlwind has been improved. Better AoE. Better Mountain Tane, that's the hero talent spec. They've continued to work diligently on that. Discipline Priest also continues to hang around in the A tier or remains unchanged in the A tier. And finally, a rogue spec, Assassination, so Assassination Rogue. There was some nerfs to a few individual abilities, but the overall gameplay has been made a lot smoother. Better energy generation currently looks pretty strong from what I've read. And Elemental Shaman is also being considered very solid by many right now. Although important spells like Ascendance were nerfed, others were buffed in return, and that's why this spec comes across pretty well. Otherwise, we can move on to the S tier with that. One of the specs that apparently works extremely well at this point, at least that's what was said in Now's video, is Vengeance Demon Hunter. He also posted videos like, is this going to be the new ultimate meta tank? So we'll have to wait and see a bit. Prop Paladin also seems to be very, very strong right now. In some forum posts, people have said it's the biggest winner of the whole patch. There were already damage buffs for it anyway. Right now it's doing insane damage and its survivability has been heavily buffed. And the Red Paladin is also popping up in S tier, at least in some speculations, which in the end is also due to many buffs to the entire damage toolkit. And Red Tree wasn't bad before either. That's why many people assume that it will get even better. Other than that, we also have the Beast Mastery Hunter at the top. In the end, there were also many buffs that should improve the spec. What I've also seen in many videos is that the Resto Druid is considered one of the best healers, if not the best healer. After that, usually Disc and Shaman came next, right? Nah. Shaman might also move up a bit. Windwalker Monk doesn't seem to be quite as strong anymore. So at the current time, I would rather place him in the B tier. Then we still have 5 specs left. One of them is the Shadow Priest. Blizzard has changed quite a bit with the talents there. And it looks very much like that's currently a really strong spec. Some people are currently ranking him as the best range DPS. I don't know if that's how it will turn out in the end. But the direction being taken here is definitely not wrong. And then we still have 4 pieces of bacon left here, where I'm absolutely unsure based on what I've read. Here, I really have to rely heavily on assumptions. But I would place all of them somewhere between B and A tier. So for Unholy, for example, there were nerfs. I think it won't be quite as strong anymore, but I still think it's strong enough. Survival Hunter is kind of a sleeper pick for me. It actually wasn't that bad in the current season. As you might expect for something that's never played, I think it's gonna end up somewhere in the B to A tier. Let's go with B for the Marksmanship Hunter. Yeah, I haven't read much about its actual potential, but rather that there are still a lot of people saying they absolutely don't like playing this spec and still think it's rubbish. That's why I'd rather put it in the C tier here. The other Hunter specs seem to be A, better, and B, more fun. And then we have the Arms Warrior, who is currently performing very well. In the current season here, too, I would place it between A and B. I don't think it's going to be the absolute meta spec. But, yeah, maybe I should have made an in-between category, but let's just put it in here for now. Like I said, this whole thing is a work in progress. This is my personal assessment of a lot of things I've read and seen, so don't take it too seriously. But that's just a little initial assessment, and it would mean that if things really turn out this way, we would have shaken up the meta quite a bit. Healer seems to be a new, better spot. Apparently there have been some changes with the tanks. Yes. Let's wait and see how it turns out in the end. With that said, thank you all very much for watching. See you next video. Have a good time and take care.